1 month after my daughter's wedding. The photographer called and told me to come alone and stay silent. When he showed me what he had captured in the photos, I didn't confront anyone or ask questions. I made one careful move instead, and what happened next destroyed everything they had planned. Before I tell you how everything unraveled, do me a small favor. Support this channel by subscribing and sharing where you're watching from. Stories like this only travel when people like you help them move. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Unknown numbers rarely brought anything good, and I had reports to review. Inventory numbers spread neatly across my desk, but instinct maybe, made me answer. "Mr. Harris?" A woman asked quietly. "Yes, this is Claire Nolan. I photographed your daughter's wedding last month. I need to speak with you immediately. Alone. Please don't tell your daughter." My grip tightened around the mug. "What's this about?" "I can't explain over the phone," she whispered. "But I found something in the photos. Something serious. Please come to my studio tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock. The line went dead. I sat frozen, staring at the framed photo on my desk. My eldest daughter on her wedding day, radiant, confident, smiling beside the man she had chosen. I had paid for every detail of that wedding. $60,000 without hesitation. Because that's what fathers do when they believe they're helping their children start strong. From upstairs, I heard my younger daughter's voice, sharp and irritated. "Dad, did you hear me? I need money for a new car. This one is embarrassing." Her boyfriend laughed somewhere in the background, the television blaring like he owned the place. "We'll talk later." I called back. Later never came anymore. My younger daughter had been living in my guest house for 4 years. "Temporary," she said. Her boyfriend moved in 6 months after that. No rent, no deadline, just constant requests. Spa weekends, car upgrades, business ideas that never left paper. By noon, her boyfriend wandered into my office without knocking. "She's serious about the car," he said casually. "Maybe just give her the money and keep things calm." I looked at him. 38 years old, unemployed, leaning against my doorframe like he belonged there. "I'm working," I replied. He smirked and walked out. That hollow feeling in my chest grew heavier. That evening, my eldest daughter stopped by unannounced. Perfect hair, designer handbag, confidence polished to a shine. She barely sat before saying it. "We found a house. We need $40,000 for the down payment. The market's hot. Not can you help? Not is this possible. Just expectation." "Let me think about it," I said. Her smile flickered for half a second. "Don't take too long," she said. "We can't lose this place." When she left, I stood in the doorway watching her car disappear, the realization finally settling in. They all assumed my money was theirs. My time, my space, my future. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I drove downtown to a photography studio, my mind replaying the wedding day again and again. Nothing had seemed wrong. Everything had looked perfect. Claire met me at the door, nervous hands, eyes apologetic. "I'm so sorry," she said, locking the door behind me. "I didn't go looking for this." She pulled up the images. First, the ceremony. Smiles. Vows. Then she clicked into another folder. 2 hours before the wedding, my son-in-law stood on a terrace, tuxedo unbuttoned, kissing another woman. Intimate, deliberate, confident. Not panic. Not hesitation. Familiarity. My knees weakened. "There are timestamps," Claire said softly. "Metadata. GPS. It's real. More photos. Different angles." In one, the woman's hand pressed against his chest. A wedding ring. I drove home in silence, the flash drive heavy in my pocket. When I pulled into my driveway, the house looked the same. But I wasn't. Inside, my younger daughter's boyfriend sat in my chair, beer in hand. "Grab me one, too," he said without looking up. From upstairs, my younger daughter called out, "Dad, I need spa money for the weekend." Something inside me finally snapped, not loudly, not violently. Clean. Final. That night, I didn't sleep. I listened. And that's when I heard my younger daughter laughing on the phone upstairs, bragging about how long they could stretch things before I caved. And then I heard my eldest daughter's voice, calm, calculating, talking about divorce plans, wedding money, and how easy it was to play me. By morning, I wasn't a father trying to keep peace anymore. I was a man preparing to protect himself. Morning arrived without rest. I hadn't slept so much as drifted in and out of awareness, replaying the same images until dawn pushed gray light through the curtains. The house was quiet in that false way it gets when people are asleep, but tension still lingers in the walls. I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and wrote everything down while it was still sharp. Times, words, who said what, not emotions, facts. Years in business had taught me that clarity comes from documentation, not outrage. The first thing I did was leave the house before anyone woke up. I drove across town to the main branch where I handle my company accounts. I'd been banking there for nearly 20 years. The staff knew me well enough not to ask unnecessary questions. The branch manager greeted me with a practiced smile. "Good morning, Mr. Harris. What can I do for you?" "I need to verify a few transactions," I said calmly. "Wedding related." She pulled up the accounts. The joint account my daughter and her husband had opened 2 months before the wedding. Not after. Before. I watched the screen carefully. Cash deposits. Checks. Large amounts. All categorized neatly. May 10th. I said more to myself than her. "That's when this account was opened?" "Yes," she confirmed. Everything cleared properly. 2 months before the ceremony. Before vows. Before promises. Before the ring. It wasn't a marriage. It was a collection strategy. I thanked her and left without another word. On the drive home, my phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages from my eldest daughter. Friendly at first, then impatient. "Did you think about the house? We really need an answer. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." I didn't reply. When I pulled into the driveway, my younger daughter's boyfriend's car was still there, parked crookedly as always. Inside, the smell of last night's takeout hung in the air. I moved quietly through the house and into my office. That's when I heard it. My younger daughter upstairs, phone on speaker, voice loud and careless. "I know," she laughed. "He's acting weird, but we've got time. He always folds." I stopped moving. Her sister's voice came through the phone next, calm and confident. "Just distract him. Make him think you need something big. That way when I ask for the down payment, it won't seem excessive." More laughter. "And the divorce?" my younger daughter asked. 2 more months, her sister replied. "Half the wedding money is legally mine. He already agreed to split it." The room felt like it tilted. I backed away silently and closed my office door. There it was. Not suspicion. Not interpretation. Admission. My daughters weren't just careless with my money. They were coordinating. I sat down and stared at the wall for a long time. The hurt came later. First came a colder realization. If I reacted emotionally, I would lose control. And control was the only thing I had left. I called a lawyer that afternoon. Not someone recommended by family. Not someone who helped a friend once. A specialist in property law and asset protection. His assistant scheduled me for the next morning. That evening, I served dinner as usual. Ate alone. My younger daughter and her boyfriend laughed upstairs. No one asked how my day was. After midnight, I began sorting documents. Property deeds. Business ownership papers. Bank statements. Insurance policies. Everything that represented 40 years of work. The next morning, I sat across from the lawyer in a glass-walled office overlooking downtown. He listened without interrupting. Read the documents. Reviewed the flash drive. Took notes. When I finished, he leaned back. "Your instincts are correct," he said. "You're being positioned as a financial resource, not a family member." "What are my options?" I asked. "First," he said calmly, "we protect what's yours. Second, we establish boundaries that can't be negotiated emotionally." He explained eviction laws. 30 days. No lease. No rent. Clear path. Then estate planning. Irrevocable trust, he said. Once assets are transferred, they're no longer accessible to manipulation. You maintain control while you're alive. Afterward, distribution follows your terms. How soon? I asked. Immediately. I signed the engagement letter. On the way home, I stopped at a printing store and made copies of everything. That evening, my younger daughter cornered me in the kitchen. "So," she asked, "about the car." "Not happening," I said. Her face hardened instantly. "Why are you being like this?" she snapped. "You're acting like we're strangers." I looked at her calmly. "Strangers don't assume," I replied. She stormed off. Later that night, my eldest daughter texted, "We're coming over tomorrow. We need to talk as a family." Not a question, a demand. I smiled for first time in days. They thought this was a negotiation. They didn't yet realize the rules had changed. They arrived the next evening exactly on time, which told me everything I needed to know. When people plan together, they arrive together. My eldest daughter's car pulled into the driveway first, polished and confident, followed by my younger daughter's boyfriend's dented sedan. A few seconds later, my younger daughter stepped out of the guest house, smoothing her hair as if preparing for a performance. I stood at the kitchen counter and listened to the doors close, footsteps converging toward the front entrance. For years, I would have gone to greet them, smile ready, shoulders already carrying whatever weight they planned to place there. This time, I stayed where I was. They came in loudly, filling the house with artificial warmth. "Dad," my eldest daughter called out, "we brought dinner. No cooking for you tonight." Her husband followed close behind her, wearing that same composed expression I had seen in the wedding photos, controlled, pleasant, unreadable. The man who could kiss another woman 2 hours before marrying my daughter and still stand at an altar without blinking. My younger daughter hovered nearby, arms folded, watching me carefully. Her boyfriend stayed slightly behind her, scanning the room like he always did, as if assessing territory. We sat at the table together. Food was laid out. Plates clinked. Everyone waited for someone else to speak first. My eldest daughter finally broke the silence. "We're worried about you," she said gently. "You've been distant." "I've been observant," I replied. Her smile stiffened. She continued anyway. "The situation with my sister, it's not healthy for anyone. All this tension." Her husband nodded. "We just want what's best for everyone." That was a line they always used when what they meant was what's best for us. "I agree," I said calmly. "It's not healthy." My younger daughter leaned forward. "So let's fix it. We can figure something out." Compromise. Compromise. Another favorite word. One that always seemed to require me giving something up. "I already have," I said. They exchanged looks. My eldest daughter frowned. "What do you mean?" I stood, walked my office, and returned with a folder. I placed it on the table, but didn't open it yet. Before anyone could speak, I said, "Before we talk about houses, cars, or money, I need to know something." Their attention sharpened. I looked directly at my eldest daughter's husband. "Who is the woman you were kissing 2 hours before your wedding?" Silence felt like a drop plate. My eldest daughter's face drained a color. Her husband opened his mouth, then closed it. "What are you talking about?" my eldest daughter asked, voice tight. I slid the folder toward her. "Photographs," I said. "Time stamped. Location verified." She opened it with shaking hands. Her eyes scanned the first image, then the second, then the third. Her expression didn't break into tears. It hardened. She looked up slowly, eyes cold. "You went digging," she said. "I was shown," I replied, "by the photographer who took your wedding photos." Her husband finally spoke. "This is being taken out of context." I laughed once. Not loudly, just enough. "There is no context," I said, "where that is acceptable." My younger daughter stared at the photos, then at her sister. Her mouth opened slightly. "You said you didn't know," she whispered. My eldest daughter snapped her gaze toward her. "Be quiet." That told me more than words ever could. I continued. "I also overheard a phone call," I said evenly. "A conversation between my 2 daughters. About timing. About divorce." about how easy it was to play me. My younger daughter jumped up. You were spying on us? No, I said. You were careless. My eldest daughter stood too, anger flashing. You violated our privacy. You violated my trust, I replied. For years. Her husband scoffed. Let's slow down. Emotions are running high. I turned to him. You don't get to moderate this. He fell silent. I opened my folder and pulled out another document. This, I said, is a formal eviction notice. My younger daughter's breath caught. You have 30 days, I continued calmly, to vacate the guest house. Both of you. Her boyfriend stood abruptly. You can't do that. I can, I said, and I have. My younger daughter looked at me as if I'd struck her. You're choosing this over your own child? She cried. I met her gaze. I'm choosing reality over manipulation. My eldest daughter slammed the folder shut. You're destroying this family. No, I said quietly. I'm stepping out of the role you assigned me. Her husband leaned toward her, whispering something urgent. She shook him off. You owe us, she snapped at me. After everything we've done to make you proud. I felt something in my chest loosen. You confuse presence with ownership, I said. I owe you honesty. I gave you support. You turned it into entitlement. My younger daughter started crying. Real tears this time, or at least convincing ones. I can't believe you're doing this, she sobbed. We're family. I stood. Family doesn't plot, I said. Family doesn't coordinate lies. Family doesn't laugh about using someone. Her boyfriend stepped toward me, voice rising. This is insane. People will hear about this. They already will, I said calmly, and I'm fine with the truth. My eldest daughter grabbed her purse. We're leaving. Her husband followed, jaw clenched. At the door, she turned back. You think this makes you strong, she said. It just makes you alone. I didn't answer. They left in silence. The house felt different immediately. Quieter, clearer. That night, my younger daughter's boyfriend tried to intimidate me, blocking doorways, raising his voice. I documented everything. Times, words, behavior. 2 days later, the lawyer called. Trust paperwork is ready, he said. One signed. Everything is protected. I signed that afternoon. The assets moved quietly, efficiently, irreversibly. Within a week, my eldest daughter stopped calling. My younger daughter alternated between rage and pleading. I remained calm, because something had shifted inside me. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was acting. The next morning, the house felt unfamiliar in a way that wasn't empty, but exposed. Like a room after furniture has been moved and the outlines on the wall show you what was really there all along. I walked through it slowly, noticing things I had ignored for years. Shoes by the door that weren't mine. Coffee mugs left half full. Cabinets rearranged to suit someone else's habits. I opened the guest house door. My younger daughter's space. Clothes everywhere. Makeup on the sink. Her boyfriend's boots by the bed. Evidence of occupation. Without contribution. For years, I had told myself it was temporary. That helping was love. That patience would eventually be rewarded. What I had really been doing was postponing the inevitable. By noon, the first message came. Not a call. A message. Carefully written. Dad, we need to talk. This is getting out of hand. Please stop involving lawyers. You're overreacting. Overreacting. The word made me smile, but not with humor. I didn't respond. An hour later, another message followed. This one longer, more emotional. I know you're hurt, but families don't throw each other out. People will judge you for this. Think about your reputation. There it was. Not concern. Not remorse. Fear of exposure. Still, I didn't reply. By evening, the tone changed. My younger daughter stood in my office doorway, eyes red, voice trembling. I didn't sleep, she said. I gestured to the chair. Sit. She didn't. She stayed standing, arms wrapped around herself. I didn't think you'd actually do it, she whispered. I did, I replied. Her eyes darted to the desk. The documents. The folders. You're really serious. Yes. She swallowed. We can fix this. I'll start paying rent. I'll look for a job. We just need more time. You had for years. She flinched. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. You planned for it to continue. Her face hardened. So you're just going to abandon me? No, I said calmly. I'm removing myself from being exploited. She laughed bitterly. You sound like a lawyer now. I looked at her. Really looked. Not the child I once carried on my shoulders. Not the teenager who cried when she scraped her knee. This was an adult who had learned that tears could be tools. You're not a victim, I said. You're a participant. Her jaw clenched. You're choosing money over blood. I shook my head. You chose comfort over conscience. She stepped back as if struck. Behind her, I heard footsteps. Her boyfriend appeared, arms crossed, posture aggressive. This is ridiculous, he said. You can't just flip a switch and kick people out. I can, I said. And I have. He scoffed. You'll regret this. Threats won't change timelines, I replied. He took a step closer. You think paperwork protects you from consequences? I stood, slowly, deliberately. I think documentation protects me from lies, I said. And I'm done being intimidated in my own home. There was a long silence. Then my younger daughter spoke quietly. You're not the man I thought you were. I nodded once. That's true. They left together. No door slam, just heavy footsteps. That night, I locked my office door for the first time in years. The next day, the smear campaign began. Neighbors stopped waving. A mutual friend called, hesitant. I heard things are tense at home. I replied simply, they are being resolved legally. Rumors spread faster than facts. That was fine. On the third day, my eldest daughter showed up alone. No husband, no smile. She sat across from me, hands folded. You embarrassed us, she said flatly. I waited. People are talking. I expected that. She leaned forward. You expose private matters. You monetize private trust. Her eyes flashed. You're punishing us. No, I said. I'm withdrawing support. She laughed sharply. You think this makes you powerful? No, I said. It makes me free. Her expression changed then. Calculation replaced anger. What do you want? She asked. I almost felt sorry for her. I want nothing, I replied. She stared. That's not true. It is, I said. I don't want apologies. I don't want reconciliation. I want distance. Her voice dropped. You'll die alone. I met her gaze steadily. I'd rather die alone than live surrounded by people who count my worth in installments. She stood abruptly. You'll regret this, she said. I regret waiting this long. I answered. She left without another word. A week passed. Packing began in the guest house, loudly and dramatically. Boxes slammed. Arguments echoed. I documented everything. On day 12, something changed. My younger daughter knocked again. Softer this time. She sat. I didn't think you'd really follow through, she said quietly. I always do, I replied. She stared at the floor. I don't know how to live without you fixing things. That's the point, I said. Tears fell. Real ones this time. I don't know how to start over. I softened but did not bend. Neither did I said. But I learned. She looked up. So that's it? Yes. She nodded slowly. On day 29, the sheriff's notice was prepared. On day 30, they left. No shouting. No drama. Just suitcases and silence. The driveway was empty by noon. That evening, I walked through the guest house. It felt lighter, as if it could breathe again. I sat on the porch and watched the sun sink behind the hills. For the first time in years, there was no tension waiting for me inside. Just quiet. And the quiet didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. The silence after they left wasn't peaceful at first. It was loud in its own way, like a ringing in my ears after years of constant noise. I woke up the next morning expecting to hear footsteps in the guest house, cabinets opening, someone complaining about coffee or money or plans I was supposed to finance. Instead, there was nothing, just the hum of the refrigerator and birds outside. I stood in the kitchen, holding my mug longer than necessary, letting the reality settle in. They were gone, not temporarily, not until things cooled down, gone because the door had finally closed. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed. A message from my eldest daughter. "You really went through with it." I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, another message arrived. "You didn't have to involve the sheriff. That was humiliating." Still, I stayed silent. I had learned something important over the past month. Silence was the only language they hadn't learned how to manipulate. That afternoon, I met with my attorney again. We reviewed everything. Eviction completed. Trust finalized. Beneficiaries locked. No loopholes. No leverage left for emotional blackmail, disguised as family concern. "You should expect pushback," the attorney warned. "They'll test boundaries. Possibly try to guilt you into reversing things." "I won't," I said. He nodded. "Good. Because legally, everything is solid. Emotionally, it's on you to hold the line." I drove home thinking about that word. Line. I had never had one before. Not a real one. I had rules for employees, contract for suppliers, standards for business. But with my own children, I had replaced boundaries with hope. Hope that they'd mature. Hope that gratitude would come later. Hope that love would be enough. Hope it cost me years. 2 days later, the call started. Not angry. Not demanding. Careful. My eldest daughter called first. "I just want to understand," she said softly. "This feels extreme." "What feels extreme," I replied, "is realizing my children discussed dividing my money like an inheritance before I was even gone." A pause. That was taken out of context. "No," I said calmly. "It was overheard in context." She sighed. "You're punishing us for talking." "I'm protecting myself from planning," I said. Her voice sharpened. "You always do this. You shut down instead of communicating." "I communicate clearly," I replied. "You just don't like the message." She hung up. The next call came from her husband. Different tone. Businesslike. "Look," he said, "let's be adults. This whole thing has become unnecessary." "Go on," I said. "You're hurting relationships that don't need to be destroyed. You build a marriage on deception." I replied evenly. "Don't lecture me about unnecessary damage." Silence. "You're going to regret this," he said finally. "Maybe," I replied. "But I already regret trusting people who treated loyalty like weakness." He didn't call again. A week passed. The house began to feel like mine again. I rearranged furniture. Threw out things I'd never chosen. Cleaned rooms that had been occupied by resentment instead of rent. I didn't rush it. I took my time. Reclaimed each space deliberately. On the 8th day after the eviction, I found something left behind in the guest house. A notebook. Curiosity got the better of me. It was my younger daughter's. Pages filled with lists. Plans. Numbers. Dates. Notes about money she expected to receive. Things she assumed would happen. I closed it gently. Not angry. Just clear. They hadn't seen me as a father in a long time. I was a future payout. That realization didn't hurt anymore. It clarified everything. The following Friday, a letter arrived. Handwritten. My eldest daughter. Not emotional. Strategic. She apologized not for what she'd done, but for how things had escalated. She suggested therapy. Mediation. A reset. She mentioned reconciliation. Healing. Family unity. Not once did she mention the lies. The planning. The manipulation. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I didn't respond. 2 weeks after the eviction, the calls stopped. That's when I knew something else was happening. And I was right. A certified letter arrived from a law firm representing my eldest daughter. They were exploring options regarding my estate and mental capacity. I laughed out loud. So that was the move. I forwarded the letter to my attorney. His response came quickly. Expected. Don't worry. They have nothing. The trust was established while you were fully competent, documented, and witnessed. This will go nowhere. Still, it stung. Not because I feared the outcome, but because of the intent. They weren't trying to repair anything. They were trying to regain access. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Because once someone shows you exactly who they are, you stop second-guessing your decisions. 3 days later, I ran into an old friend at the grocery store. "Quiet house these days?" he asked casually. "Yes," I said, "and it's the most honest it's ever been." He studied my face. "You look different." "I am," I replied. At home, I sat on the porch as evening settled in. The sky shifted from gold to purple. I thought about all the years I'd sacrificed rest for responsibility, clarity for compromise. I hadn't lost my family. I had lost illusions. And illusions are expensive. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Almost. "This is your daughter," the voice said. "The younger one." I listened. "I don't know where to go," she said quietly. "I didn't think you'd really let us fail." "I didn't let you fail," I replied. I stopped preventing it. Silence. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I was too," I said. The first time I stood up for myself. She cried. Real crying. No performance. "I don't hate you," she said. "I know," I replied. "But I can't fix this for you," I added. "And you shouldn't want me to." She hung up. I didn't feel victorious. I felt done. Done being pulled in opposite directions. Done being leveraged. Done being generous at my own expense. Peace came slowly, not as relief, but as stability. No more waiting for the next demand. No more bracing for the next guilt trip. No more wondering what was being planned behind my back. Just days. Routine. Choice. I took a long walk the next morning. Not to think, just a walk. For the first time in decades, every step belonged to me. The strange thing about peace is that it doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in fragments. Small, almost forgettable moments that stack quietly until one day you realize you're no longer bracing yourself for impact. I noticed it first in the mornings. No tension in my shoulders when I walked into the kitchen. No instinct to check my phone before coffee. No background anxiety humming beneath every thought. Just silence and choice. For 40 years, I had lived by obligation. Employees, suppliers, deadlines, family. I had been needed constantly, and I'd mistaken that need for purpose. Now, without anyone demanding anything, I had to relearn what purpose felt like when it wasn't attached to sacrifice. The first week passed quietly. Then the outside world began to react. A supplier I'd known for years called, voiced cautious. I heard some things about trouble at home. I didn't deny it. Things changed. "Family stuff?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Boundaries." There was a pause. Then a sigh. "Good for you." That surprised me. Another call came from a former employee. "I won't pry," she said, "but I just wanted to say, people notice when someone finally stops being walked on." That surprised me too. I had always assumed people admired my patience, my generosity, my willingness to absorb problems. What I hadn't realized was that many people had seen it for what it was, endurance mistaken for virtue. The first real confrontation came unexpectedly. I was leaving my attorney's office one afternoon when I saw my eldest daughter's car in the parking lot. She stepped out before I could avoid her. "You planned this," she said, skipping greetings. "I prepared for it," I replied. Her eyes were sharp. "You humiliated us." "You exploited me," I answered calmly. She scoffed. "You think cutting us off makes you strong?" "No," I said. "It makes me unreachable." Her jaw tightened. "You've turned people against us." I didn't say a word. I replied, "Your actions spoke loudly enough." She stepped closer. "You don't get to rewrite history." "I'm not rewriting it," I said. "I'm finally reading it honestly." She laughed bitterly. "You'll regret this when you need help." "I already learned what your help costs," I said. That stopped her. For the first time, she looked uncertain. "You're really done," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "I am." She turned and walked away. No shouting. No tears. Just the sound of a door closing. At home, I found a box on the porch. No return address. Inside were photographs. Old ones. Childhood moments. Holidays. Vacations. A message lay on top. We don't need these anymore. I sat down slowly. Not angry. Not sad. Resolved. They were trying to provoke nostalgia. To reopen doors with memories instead of accountability. I placed the box in the garage and closed it. Some memories are meant to stay in the past where they belong. The next development came through my lawyer. They've backed off, he said over the phone. No more state challenges. No more threats. Why? I asked. Because they consulted someone else, he replied, and were told they don't have a case. I nodded. Good. But, he added, don't be surprised if they try a different approach. And they did. This time, it wasn't legal. It was public. A distant relative called. Your daughter says you become cold, that you're pushing everyone away. I smiled faintly. That's one interpretation. Another message arrived from an old family friend. She says you're isolating yourself. Solitude is an isolation, I replied. The narrative they were selling painted me as cruel, stubborn, unwell. I didn't counter it. I let the truth stand on its own. The funny thing about lies is that they require constant maintenance. Truth doesn't. 2 months passed. My younger daughter sent one message. I got a job. I replied with one word. Good. That was all. I wasn't her safety net anymore. And that was the point. One afternoon, I ran into someone unexpected. The photographer. She smiled when she saw me. You look lighter. I feel it, I replied. We talked about small things, work, life. She didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. She didn't want anything. That felt new. For the first time in years, I wasn't being evaluated for what I could provide, only for who I was. As weeks turned into months, the noise faded. No more surprise visits. No more threats. No more manipulation disguised as concern. Just quiet and clarity. I took inventory of my life. What I wanted to keep, what I wanted to release, what I wanted to build next. I wasn't rebuilding a family. I was rebuilding myself. One evening, as the sun dipped low, my phone buzzed. A message from my eldest daughter. I hope you're happy. I typed a response, paused, then deleted it. Some conversations are finished even if the other person keeps speaking. I put the phone down. Outside, the air was warm. Calm. I sat back and breathed deeply. Not relieved. Not triumphant. Just steady. For the first time in decades, my life was no longer a negotiation. It was mine. The season changed without my noticing. One morning I stepped outside and felt it immediately. The air cooler, lighter, carrying the faint scent of dry leaves. Time had been moving forward, even while my life felt paused for years. Now it was catching up all at once. With distance came perspective. I began seeing the past not as a single betrayal, but as a pattern that had stretched quietly over decades. The signs had always been there. I had simply chosen generosity over honesty, patience over boundaries, love over self-respect. That illusion had cost me more than money. It had cost me myself. I spent that autumn reorganizing everything, not just a house, but my routines, my habits, my thinking. I sold off equipment I didn't use. Donated furniture I'd kept out of obligation. Cleared shelves filled with objects that held no meaning beyond guilt. Each item removed felt like breathing room. People noticed. Friends commented that I looked healthier. Employees said I was sharper in meetings. Decisions came easier now that I wasn't weighing how they might affect people who only cared about outcomes when money was involved. One afternoon, a longtime business associate stopped by unexpectedly. I heard about the situation with your kids, he said carefully. I waited. I went through something similar, he continued. It nearly broke me. I wish I'd had the courage you did. I shook my head. Courage came after exhaustion. He nodded. That's how it always works. That evening, as I locked up the office, my phone rang. My younger daughter. I considered letting it go to voicemail. but something told me to answer. "I'm not calling for money," she said immediately. "I know better now." I stayed silent. "I wanted you to hear it directly," she continued. "I moved into a small place. I'm paying rent. I'm managing." "That's good," I said. There was a pause. "I didn't realize how much I leaned on you." "I did," I replied gently. She exhaled. "I'm angry sometimes. At you. At myself." "That's part of learning," I said. "I don't expect things to go back to how they were," she added. "I just didn't want the last thing between us to be shouting." "Neither did I." "We're not closing the door," I said carefully. "We're leaving it where it is. Closed for now." She accepted that. "I'll call again someday," she said. "Maybe," I replied. When the call ended, I didn't feel relief or sadness, just balance. The real confrontation came weeks later. I wasn't expecting it. I was at home one Saturday morning when the doorbell rang. I looked through the window and saw my eldest daughter standing there, alone, no car visible. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. She looked smaller somehow, less polished. "I walked," she said. "I didn't want this to feel transactional." That word again. I stepped aside. She entered slowly, eyes scanning the room. The rearranged furniture, the emptier shelves. "You changed things," she said. "Yes," I replied. We sat across from each other. No coffee, no pleasantries. "I didn't come to argue," she said. "Good," I replied. She folded her hands tightly. "I didn't expect you to stand firm." "I didn't expect to need to," I said. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. "You made us look awful. You made choices," I said calmly. Visibility wasn't my decision. She clenched her jaw. "I thought if I kept things smooth, if I managed situations, everything would work out." "You confuse control with stability," I replied. She nodded slowly. "Maybe." Silence filled the room. "I don't trust you anymore," she said finally. "I know," I replied. "I don't trust you either." That honesty startled her. "I didn't come to fix things," she said. "I came to understand why you stopped trying." I leaned back, because trying became permission. She absorbed that. I spent my life proving myself useful. I continued. I confused usefulness with love. When I stopped being useful, you stopped being present. "That's not fair," she said. "It's accurate," I replied. She looked away. "What do you want now?" she asked quietly. "I want you to succeed," I said. "Without me." Her voice cracked. "And if I fail, then you'll learn something real," I said. She stood slowly. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said. "I don't need forgiveness," I replied. I needed honesty. She paused at the door. "I don't know if I'll come back." "That's your choice," I said. When she left, I didn't feel victorious. I felt complete. Later that night, I sat alone on the porch, listening to the wind move through the trees. I thought about legacy. Not money, not property, not what would be left behind, but what would stop with me. The cycle of entitlement, the assumption of access, the belief that love equals obligation. Those things ended here. I had done what I came to do. I had reclaimed my life without cruelty, protected my work without hatred, chosen myself without destroying anyone. They would tell their version of the story. I would live mine. The phone stayed silent that night. And for the first time, silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like peace. Winter arrived softly, without drama. No storms, no sudden cold. Just shorter days and longer evenings that encouraged stillness. I welcomed it. After years of noise, winter felt honest. I settled into a rhythm I hadn't known before. Mornings started early. Coffee on the porch, even when the air was sharp enough to sting my lungs. I read again, not reports or contracts, but novels I'd postponed for decades. I cooked meals meant for one, discovering I preferred simplicity to excess. The house no longer echoed with tension. Every room felt neutral again, reclaimed. Then the consequences I predicted began unfolding, quietly but inevitably. It started with a call from a former acquaintance, someone I hadn't spoken to since the wedding. I wasn't sure whether to say anything, she said carefully. But I thought you should know your daughter's divorce isn't as clean as she expected. I listened. Turns out there were agreements made before the wedding, she continued. Messages, emails. Lawyers are involved now. The money isn't landing where she thought it would. I thanked her and ended the call. I felt no satisfaction, only confirmation. Schemes built on secrecy collapse under light. Weeks later, another call, this time from my attorney. They're contesting nothing, he said plainly. They know they can't. Good, I replied. They've asked whether you'd reconsider mediation, he added. No, I said. The process is complete. He paused. I thought that might be your answer. And that was that. The past no longer chased me. One evening, while organizing old files, I came across a photo album I'd nearly forgotten. My daughters as children, smiles unguarded, faces not yet shaped by expectation or entitlement. I sat with it longer than I expected. Grief surfaced, not for what I lost, but for what might have been if boundaries had existed earlier, if I had taught them strength instead of rescue, accountability instead of comfort. But regret, I'd learned, was a teacher, not a sentence. I closed the album and placed it back on the shelf, not hidden, not displayed. Balanced. Spring arrived early that year. With it came a letter, handwritten, from my younger daughter. She didn't ask for anything. She wrote about work, about budgeting, about learning to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. She admitted things without dramatizing them, took responsibility without blaming others. She ended the letter simply. I don't know if we'll ever be close again, but I know now that you weren't cruel. You were finished being used. I read it twice. Then I placed it in my desk drawer, not as a trophy, as a marker. Progress. The last surprise came months later. A knock on the door. I opened it to find someone I didn't recognize at first. My eldest daughter looked older, not in years, but in expression. I won't stay long, she said. You don't have to, I replied. We stood in the entryway. I lost more than money, she admitted. Friends. Credibility. People don't trust plans built on shortcuts. I nodded. I'm not here to fix anything, she continued. I just wanted to say you were right about one thing. I waited. I confused access with love, she said quietly. Silence filled the space between us. I don't expect a relationship, she added, but I wanted to say that out loud. I met her gaze. That's enough for today. She nodded, relief flickering across her face. As she turned to leave, she paused. You didn't destroy the family, she said. You just stopped protecting a lie. After she left, I stood alone in the doorway for a long moment. Then I closed the door. Life didn't become perfect after that, but it became honest. I worked less, lived more, spoke only when words mattered. I learned that love without boundaries isn't generosity, it's surrender. And surrender, when demanded, becomes theft. I didn't claim my power through anger or spectacle. I reclaimed it through silence, consistency, and refusal. Years from now, people might forget the details, but they would remember this, that when I was finally pushed too far, I didn't shout. I simply stood still, and everything that depended on me collapsed instead. Time stopped feeling like an enemy. That was the first real change I noticed. For most of my adult life, time had been something chasing me. Deadlines, expectations, obligations disguised as love. Every phone call felt urgent. Every request came with the unspoken assumption that I would say yes. Now time simply moved. I woke when my body told me to. Ate when I was hungry. Worked because I chose to, not because someone needed something from me. The silence in my house was no longer empty, it was spacious. One afternoon, while sorting through old documents with a trust administrator, I came across a folder labeled Contingencies. I didn't remember creating it, but the handwriting was unmistakably mine. Inside were notes I'd written years earlier, long before any betrayal had become visible. If something happens to me suddenly, one line read, make sure the business cannot be dismantled emotionally. Another note followed. Children raised without limits often mistake support for ownership. I stared at the pages, unsettled. Some part of me had always known this ending was possible. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. The business continued to thrive under professional management. I stayed involved, but from a distance, mentor rather than operator. Younger executives brought ideas I never would have tried. Growth came without chaos. And no one asked me for money. That alone told me everything had changed. One morning, the trust administrator called. "There's been a development," she said carefully. I listened. "Your eldest daughter has inquired about contesting future distributions, not legally, but emotionally. She wants to understand why certain clauses exist." I exhaled slowly. "What did you tell her?" "That the trust reflects your intent at the time of execution," she replied. "And that was established while you were fully competent and uncoerced." "Good," I said. She asked if there was any possibility of amendment. I didn't answer immediately. "No," I said finally. "The document stands." "Understood." After the call ended, I didn't feel anger or triumph. I felt clarity. Boundaries only work when they remain intact under pressure. Weeks later, I received another letter, this one from my youngest daughter again. Shorter this time. She wrote about moving apartments, about learning to live within her means, about therapy sessions that were uncomfortable but necessary, about realizing that survival without rescue felt terrifying and empowering. She didn't ask to move back. She didn't ask for money. She simply wrote. That mattered more than any apology. I responded with 3 sentences. "I'm glad you're learning who you are without support crutches. Growth is rarely comfortable. I hope you keep choosing honesty over ease." I mailed it the same day. Summer returned. With it came invitations I'd once declined automatically. Barbecues, local events, volunteer opportunities. I accepted a few. At one charity repair workshop, someone asked why I spent my time there. I said, "Because this is where help is appreciated, not expected." They nodded like they understood. I made friends who knew nothing about my past. People who didn't see me as a provider or problem solver. Just a man who showed up. One evening, while attending a small community lecture, I saw someone familiar across the room. My former son-in-law. Older, less polished, alone. He noticed me at the same time. For a brief moment, we held eye contact. Then he looked away. We never spoke. We didn't need to. Some conversations are finished before they begin. The last real test came unexpectedly. A medical scare. Nothing dramatic, but enough to bring the past rushing back. Lying in a hospital bed overnight gives your mind plenty of space to wander. I wondered who would show up. Only one person did. My youngest daughter. She sat quietly, didn't cry, didn't make promises. She just asked how I felt. I told her the truth. Before she left, she said, "I know I can't fix what was broken, but I don't want to repeat it." I nodded. "That's all anyone can do," I said. After I was discharged, life resumed, slower but steady. I updated my personal letter of instruction for the trust. Not the legal document, the human one. In it, I wrote plainly, "I love my children deeply. I made mistakes by confusing protection with love. What remains is not punishment. It is consequence. If you read this someday, understand that boundaries are how love survives." I sealed the letter. Not for them. For myself. Years passed quietly. No dramatic reconciliations. No cinematic apologies. Just distance that allowed truth to breathe. I learned that some relationships aren't meant to be repaired. They're meant to be understood. And understanding doesn't always require forgiveness. Sometimes it requires acceptance. On my last birthday alone before turning a milestone year, I sat on the porch again, coffee in hand, watching the light stretch across the yard. The house stood strong. The business endured. My peace remained intact. I had not lost my family. I had lost illusions. And in return, I gained something far more valuable. A life that belonged to me. Not because I took it back loudly, but because when the moment came, I finally refused to give it away. If my story moved you, take a moment to support the channel. Subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know where you're watching from. Your engagement helps these stories reach others who may need them just as much.